I was asked to give the guys a hand at the railway for one day. That ended up being 36 years or something. I mean, I said, yeah.
Then I went up to the railway station. The office was up there. I was only about 16 years of age then. And I said, looking for a job, yep. Okay, fill out this form. I put my right date of birth. And the bloke said to me, took it back to him, and he said, no, he said, we can't give you a job. I said, why? You just told me that I got a job. No, he said, you're too young. You've got to be 21. 2 days after I went back, and the same guy was sitting there. But I'd changed clothes, my different hairstyle, I had long hair too. I signed the form a bit different to the other one. I went and gave it to him. He said, you can go down the line here and you'll see a shed there. So if you're down there at 7:30 in the morning, they'll put you out to the foreman.
We had to examine each train coming in and then examine the train before they're going out and check to make sure that they were safe enough for transit and that. So, yeah.
Came back here, I left and came back here, met my partner and stayed here for a while, worked on the railway for about 3 years or 2 years, something like that. Then I left, but she stayed around here with the kid for school. Then I went up on the vertebral track, worked every station along the vertebral track.
And my father did work on the railways. About in 1962, I reckon, he went up to Maree.
Born in Maree and still here. 81 years I've been here. I'm a descendant of the Afghan Camelees. There's contractors for the railways. I used to work with one of the contractors doing the stock work mainly. Cattle and everything, sheep. Everything got being transferred from narrow gauge to standard gauge.
I was moving back and forth between the Port Augusta Council and the railways. See, because my father worked on the railways. And as soon as I got there, people must have been aware of my skills, you know. I don't know why, but I moved up the ranks very quickly from a slinger to driving a crane, operating a crane.
If you worked on the railways, your children were sure to get jobs in that. And besides that, you got apprenticeship. Every year they were taking an apprenticeship. So, and not only that, the station guys in the hard time would come in here and work the transshipping and work on the railways. So it created employment all around.
But I remember, you know, they had this policy, and Dad was upset by it. It was probably for safety reasons. The railways wouldn't allow father-son combination working together. So I couldn't be his slinger when I was learning to drive, because he was a crane operator, but I couldn't be his slinger because, you know, I would be working with my father. And then later on, when I became a crane driver, we had to still work together by when there was derailments, he'd be on one crane and one end of the carriage and I'll be at the other end. And we have to work cooperatively to be able to get the train truck back on its wheels, you know. So Dad said, well, how come, you know, we were still working together because we had to get the train back on the track, but they wouldn't let me work beside him as a slinger. Everything that was needed up in the Northern Territory, and I don't think people realise that, had to travel through on that track out there. Go by sea and that, but that took about 6 weeks from Sydney to Darwin. So this was the way you would have to go. And everything that they needed in the Northern Territory was delivered through the train. You had the narrow gauge train taking out
800 tonnes. But then there was an increase then when they standardised the railway track, and then you had double that much. The standard gauge coming in would bring in 1,600 tonnes of freight in, so yeah.
You'd go and employ yourself, start working. When the boss went out then saw, oh, how long you been here for? No, I've been here for a week or fortnight. Oh, okay. Paid accordingly, so you put yourself on. And that's how it was with the railways. You could go along and you could get a job any time.
When the standard gauge railway came, and there was the transshipping, that would have been 1957, I think it was. And it finished in 1980, been over 20 years. There would have been about 600 people living here then. When the railway stopped, it went down to about 100. And they all had to go, or they worked to other places.
A lot of Euros were on the as fattlers along the rail stations. Our uncles were fattlers, and my older brother is fattler, I think. And those fattlers were the ones who actually fixed up the lines and put new sleepers in to make sure it was safe. They played a major part in it.
I was really happy with that £13 a fortnight, but the work was killing me. Backache all the time, bending over, packing the sleepers, carrying the big sleepers on the shoulder, putting them under the rail. The work was very hard, and I was a bit too young for it. A bloke rang me up from the station, it's Balcanoon Station. What are you doing, Roy? I said, I'm working on the railways. I want you back here, the manager. Yeah, I said, yeah, I'll come back. This job is killing me. I worked up there for about 2 or 3 years on the station. And, I wasn't making any money. £1 a week. So I come back again. I thought I'd get a job back on the railways and try and get back on in the special gang, because they pay a bit more money, and you'd be out on the line for so many weeks.
I was fortunate to have jobs that was reasonable pay. Every place I went to, it was good. Everybody paid good wages.
Repairs need to be done with the wagons and that on the train. That may be a hot box or a derailment or something. We would go right up to Oudna and beyond that, to do the repair work, because we were part of the mechanical branch. You had the mechanical branch, the ways and works, and then you had the transport. The transport were the guys who would put the train together, and we would make sure that it was safe for transit. And the ways and works were the guys who would prepare the tracks and they'd make it safe for travel, transit on here.
And Aboriginal people in general, a lot of Aboriginal people worked on the rail, even to make, the brake shoes and stuff, My cousin brother, JC, worked in the foundry in Port Augusta where they worked with hot metal. But it's a hot job in the middle of summer. You got that hot, red hot sort of steel. That would have been a terrible job. But, a lot of Euros worked with that and loved working in there.
We had three stock trains arriving and departing, plus the mixed goods and that. And so we were shifting something like 4,500 head of cattle and then the week and that, and then you had your mixed goods on Saturday and Wednesday, and then you had the 2 gowns. You had the gown in and the 2 gown out. So and then you had the mixed goods in between them. So you're looking at nearly 30 vehicles, nearly 30 wagons, train, I should say.
I worked with a TI bloke. He was a solid bloke, Tuesday Island, and he could swing that hammer. 14, 16 pounders, or maybe bigger hammer too. I worked with him all day long from 7:30 till 5 o'clock, swinging that hammer. And we were just swinging wet through the saddle. It was very hot.
There was unity in the people right across. We had Aboriginal people from down south, the Adnyamatja Araban, they were as one and working on the railway. They were one, and they were the best operators on the machines. And they became families because they married into the families of Araban, Adnyamatja and down here. So the railways actually sort of brought people together as one. And the way they treated them, and it was second to none.
One of my old uncles, he was Muslinger, old Uncle Doug, and it so happens that his son's now with my daughter, So I had a lot of good experience with him as Muslinger.
One thing good about the railways was they go into the office and they got a job. Then they'll get a card. With that card, they can go into the railway shop and get money or whatever, clothes, bandages. And if they get up to about, a couple $100, and then so we can put this on a special account.
Anything outside of Maori didn't exist because your needs were provided by the Commonwealth Railways. And anything you needed, if you needed to order goods from the Commonwealth stores, because they had their own stores, their own Father Christmas, and the whole lot. So you became part of the railway, and the railway became you owned it, you were part of it.
It meant when your pay came around, they'd take the money off you to pay the debt you've incurred during that fortnight, which meant at the end of the day you didn't get too much cash out of your pay, but that was all right. We were able to get food,
See, when they built the broad line through going up to Maori, it wouldn't have been that old. Jurists didn't have much to say about where they can put that line. There's a lot of places they'd have to go unasked, but they didn't listen to people. Jurists said, you're going to be careful, but they still did it. They never listened.
I look back now and I say, what I am, I can contribute to the railways and that, and the support they had for the families, and not only the families, but the whole town. So, yeah.
A lot of us work for the railways. Railways was a major employer of our people, Adnyamatja people and other Aboriginal people, It was major.
I finished in '86 because we still had to provide the service to Udindara until the east-west railway track they had was completed. And so I finished in '86, and I was myself, Jeffrey Can, and Jeffrey Kennedy were the last railway workers to receive their pay here by MIC, And then the contractors came in and pulled up all the track then. From Udindara to here, back to Maori, all that rail went over to Japan for the war casings and all that. And then from Udindara up the thing went across to Queensland for the sugarcane rail tracks and that.
Only about 80 people here live on it at the moment, I think. Most of them went to Port Augusta for work. There's a lot of relations there in Port Augusta.
Those people are all gone down old ways, Uncle Doug, he's passed away a long time ago now. I had a good relationship with him, both not only as Muslinger but as uncle. And we had a lot of laughs, and he taught me a lot of cultural stuff too. I loved working with him. When I think about those old people, I feel a bit sad, that they're no longer part of my life, but they were an interesting part of my early life,